Hey everybody, here's our next steps for our Invader-inspired mosaic project. So everyone should be designing on this 7x7 grid, and it's really important that you actually color in each square fully so that you can understand your design more clearly. So for example, this is not a good example because I haven't filled in each square completely. What you can do is go through and outline each square and then color inside of each square fully to better understand what your design actually looks like when it's fully colored. Now, I'm not saying it has to be perfect, but it is important that you fill in each square completely to better understand your design. So let me show you that difference here. Now, you may be thinking, what in the world am I drawing? And that would be a good question, because once I actually fill in this design, it's pretty hard to tell what it is, right? So that's why this design step is so important, to see if your design actually makes sense when we make it so simple within this pixel grid of 7x7. So you can see, now that I've kind of filled this in, now what in the world is this? I don't know, kind of looks like an arrow. I was actually going for a jellyfish with this design. I was thinking this would be a tentacle, 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 and the top of the jellyfish. But now that I've drawn it, it's really hard to tell what that is. So I think I'm not going to do this design. And that's why this design process is so important, to see, does your design actually make sense? Now, I am seeing this could actually be kind of an interesting face, or if I changed this to be here and made this one blue, it becomes a symmetrical pattern that kind of looks cool. This is kind of a heart shape, I don't know. So you could think about, if your initial design doesn't work, what if you change it a little bit, what could it be? So this is my initial design, and I'm not going to go with this design. My next thought was doing a Z for Zaha, and I decided I wanted to do a rainbow border around it, but I was going like pink, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and then I realized that that's 7 colors, and I actually needed, it didn't go around correctly. So I used the back of my paper to do another draft of my design. So I found that I actually needed to have only a 6-color rainbow border to make it work out and fit. So it had to be red in each corner. So you can see that way I was able to plan it out more carefully. And I decided to do the Z in gold. I drew it in brown because I didn't have a gold colored pencil. So this is the Z, and you can see that it is legible as a Z, thankfully. And in my design, I was going for a white background, but I actually think it would look better with a darker background, and you can see I have made it already, and it looks like this. How cool is that? Now, I have not grouted this yet, but what I want to point out is that there is space for grout, and I'm actually using the natural spacing of the tiles as they come from the manufacturer. So when you get the tiles, they actually come stuck together, and they have a backing like this. And it's actually going to be really important for us to keep this backing as much as possible, because this paper backing prevents the tiles from sliding around when we glue them down. If we don't have the backing, they twist and turn and slide around, and it does not work very well. So we want to keep this backing on here as much as possible, which means when we're getting our tiles to make our final pieces, we can actually tear them. This does tear relatively easily, or we can cut them with scissors. But I do have 6 of these, and these are 7x7 tiles, and this is what we're going to use to measure our grid on our final boards. Okay, so before this, but after this, once you have your final design and it's colored in perfectly and you're really happy with it, you can get a blank wooden board like this. If you would like to instead use this side of the board, this will be a 6x6 grid. So if you're doing that, you can, but you won't have 2 rows on the sides as you're designing. So I'm using the bigger board. This is 7x7. And once you're at this stage, once your design is approved, you're going to get one of these tiles, which has 7x7 tiles on it, and you are going to get a pencil, and you will carefully line it up so that there is the same amount of space showing on each side. And you're going to get your pencil and you are going to draw in between each of the where the grout will go. Okay, so you're going to do that on all of the sides. So notice I'm going from there and I'm drawing my line out to the edge of the wood. Okay, and I need to do that on all 4 sides. And if the paper's in the way, no big deal, just kind of go under it. That's what I'm doing here. And then from here, you'll see I have lines on the edges. And then I need to get my handy dandy ruler and I need to draw in between each of those lines really carefully. Okay, so I'm lining up each line very carefully. There we go. So now I have them one direction. Now I go the other direction. And this is so that I know exactly where my tiles will go when I start to glue them down. Oops, that was loud. And as you're drawing, you should be seeing squares forming. You should not see rectangles. These are going to be a little bigger, but these should look like nice squares. So when you're done making your grid, it should look like this, and you should be good to go. So then as you're building, what you'll do is you'll be placing each of your tiles into one of these squares and making sure that it's nice and straight. Otherwise, your grid is going to get, your pattern is going to not get spaced correctly. So it's important that when you're laying out your tiles, they are in a nice grid formation and that they are glued nice and straight and that there's enough room for the grout in between each of the tiles.